having faith in God. So one of the things that reminded me of is this thing called the Pareto Principle, which is the Pareto Principle is a prediction that 80% of effects come from 20% of causes. There should be some arrows drawn in here, so I'm going to draw some arrows. This is kind of it seems like a paradox, or it seems abnormal to think this way, because the traditional understanding of things is that you get everything that you put in. However much you put in, you get the same result as you put in, right? Which is true to a point. But there's also this principle that has been observed in a lot of different parts of life. Sorry, this pie chart's very, very oblong. But this says 80% right here, if you can't see it. I'll write that a little bit better. 80%, 20%. So what does this have to do with anything? Well, a little background on this thing called the Pareto Principle, where it came from. It's a guy really coined the term. His name's Joseph Juran, sorry. You see it in many facets of life, but the principle is named after an Italian economist back in the 1900s. His name was Vilfredo Pareto. He observed that during that time, among many other things, he observed that 80% of Italy's land was owned by 20% of its population. Then he started kind of getting very intrigued by this principle, and he started either seeking it out in all these other facets of life or just actually observing it in other facets of life. He also observed that in his garden, 80% of the peas in his garden came from 20% of the pea plants in the garden. So I've seen, and a lot of other athletes have seen, this principle's application correlate directly to massive successes in athletic endeavors, which is one of the things that I study a lot, and it helps me to get a picture of life as I know it, because life is lived out in your athletic endeavors. My coach, Forrest Hippes, he's a consistent race winner in almost all of the races that he enters. And the 80-20 rule that both he and his wife, that's the other person that I'm using as an example here, 80% of their training throughout the week is the easiest, slowest, not hard pushing training that they can do. 20%, like one day a week, they have a hard pushing day where and it's not a long duration type of thing, but it's like a very difficult, exhaustive effort. But by and large, their training that they do is very low and slow, smooth, steady. We call it long, slow distance in the endurance community, long, slow distance. And that principle they got from a book that's just about the Pareto Principle as it applies to athletics. And those guys, they win races constantly. Heidi has won marathon after marathon. She places top 3 or 4 in almost every race that I've heard of her competing in. So it kind of flies in the face of the idea that you have to push as hard as you can constantly against something in order to make it, to be successful at it. Also, the traditional understanding of that same understanding complements that idea that I talked about last couple of weeks, the minimum effective dose. This minimum creates all this effectiveness. All this, that means if this is true, then also 80% of what you're doing is ineffective and only causing 20% of your successes in what you're doing. We've seen this at work, in my work. Now, that's not to say that this is like a perfect rule. This is something that people have observed. I don't think the ratios are perfect. In fact, I'm going to point out a ratio in here in a minute where it's not perfect, but it's funny. And I've seen this in my work. Before I ever knew anything about this, we had a club at work called the 20% Club, because it was always said, and it was always observed at my workplace, that 20% of the crew there made 80% of the sales and did 80% of the work, and we called it the 20% club. We're called the 20%ers, and you have to have an initiation to be in the group where you get hit in the leg with this metal thing. It's really smart. But what I thought about when I read all this, or when I was thinking about this, I was thinking about numbers. So turn to Numbers, please. I promise this is going somewhere biblical. And like I said, it was a hastily prepared message, but I thought it very poignant to read this story in the Bible because we're talking about things that are happening in Joshua, and we all have, many of us probably have a very good understanding of where they came from and how they came to be in the position of Joshua entering the land of Canaan. But back in Numbers, chapter 13 is where we're going to start. This is really the story of how they came to spy out the land, which most, if not all of us, are very familiar with. So it's a lot more verses than I thought it was going to be. But I read fast in my head, so it seemed like it wouldn't be that long. So I'm going to start in verse 1. I'll read through all of chapter 13 and stop when I feel is a good time. So Numbers 13, verse 1 says, Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Send out for yourself men so that they may spy out the land of Canaan, which I am going to give you to the sons of Israel. You shall send a man from each of their fathers' tribes, every one a leader among them. So Moses sent them from the wilderness of Paran at the command of the Lord, all of them who were heads of the sons of Israel. And these were their names. This is the other part, the reason that I chose this section of Scripture, because I thought I would need to take up a lot of times, and it's hard to pronounce these names, and that takes a little bit of extra time. Kidding. These were their names. From the tribe of Reuben, Shammua, son of Zakur. From the tribe of Simeon, Shaphat, son of Hori, probably Horai. From the tribe of Judah, Caleb, son of Jephunneh. From the tribe of Issachar, Igal, the son of Joseph. From the tribe of Ephraim, Hoshea, son of Nun. From the tribe of Benjamin, Paltai, the son of Raphu. From the tribe of Zebulun, Gadil, the son of Sodai. From the tribe of Joseph, he was from the tribe of Joseph. From the tribe of Manasseh, Gadai, son of Susi. From the tribe of Dan, Amiel, son of Gemali. From the tribe of Asher, Sethur, the son of Michael. From the tribe of Naphtali, Nabi, son of Bophsai. From the tribe of Gad, Guel, the son of Makai. These are the names of the men whom Moses sent to spy out the land. But Moses called Hoshea, son of Nun, Joshua. That's a significant name. When Moses sent them to spy out the land of Canaan, he said to them, Go up there into the Negev, then go up into the hill country, see what the land is like. See what the land is like. See whether the people who live in it are strong or weak, whether there are few or many. How is the land in which they live? Is it good or bad? And how are the cities in which they live? Are they like open camps or with fortification? How is the land? Is it fat or lean? Are there trees in it or not? Make an effort then to get some of the fruit of the land. Now the time was the time of the first ripe grapes. So it was like the harvest season, the beginning of the harvest season. So they went up and spied out the land from the wilderness of Zin as far as Rehob at Lebo Hamath. When they had gone up to into the Negev, they came to Hebron, where Ahiman, Shishai, and Talmai, the descendants of Anak, were. Now Hebron was built 7 years before Zoan in Egypt. Then they came to the valley of Eshcol, and from there they cut down a branch with a single cluster of grapes, and they carried it on a pole between two men, with some of the pomegranates and figs. That place was called the Valley of Eshcol because of the cluster in which the sons of Israel cut down from there. I think Eshcol means, I can't say what I think it means, but I believe it means large or big or fruitful. Probably if Pastor's watching, he can correct me on that. Right. When they returned from spying out the land, at the end of 40 days, they proceeded to come to Moses and Aaron and all the congregation of the sons of Israel in the wilderness of Paran. At Kadesh they brought back word to them and to all the congregation and showed them the fruit of the land. Thus they told him and said, We went into the land where you sent us, and it certainly does flow with milk and honey. And this is the fruit. Nevertheless, the people who live in the land are strong, and the cities are fortified and very large. And moreover, we saw the descendants of Anak there. I think those are giants. Amalek is living in the land of the Negev, and the Jebusites and the Amorites are living in the hill country, and the Canaanites are living by the sea, by the side of the Jordan. Then Caleb quieted the people before Moses and said, We should by all means go up and take possession of it, for we surely will overcome it. Strong, faithful, courageous statement. But the men who had gone up with him said, We're not able to go up against the people, for they are too strong for us. So they gave out to the sons of Israel a bad report of the land, and they had spied out. The land through which we have gone and spying it out is a land that devours its inhabitants. And all the people whom we saw in it are men of great size. There also we saw the Nephilim, the sons of Anak, are part of the Nephilim, and we became like grasshoppers in our own sight. And so we were in their sight. Big people. Then all the congregation, this is where I don't know exactly where I'm going to end, so bear with me if I read slowly. Then all the congregation lifted up their voices and cried, and the people wept that night. All the sons of Israel grumbled against Moses and Aaron, and the whole congregation said to them, Would that we had died in the land of Egypt, or would that we had died in this wilderness. Why is the Lord bringing us into this land to fall by the sword? Our wives, our little ones will become plunder, and would it not be better for us to return to Egypt? So they said to one another, Let us appoint a leader and return to Egypt. Then Moses and Aaron fell on their faces in the presence of all the assembly and the congregation of the sons of Israel. Joshua, son of Nun, and Caleb, son of Jephunneh, of those who had spied out the land, tore their clothes, and they spoke to all the congregation of the sons of Israel, saying, The land which we passed through to spy out is an exceedingly good land. If the Lord is pleased with us, then he will bring us into this land and give it to us, a land which flows with milk and honey. Only do not rebel against the Lord, and do not fear the people of the land, for they will be our prey. Their protection has been removed from them, and the Lord is with us. Do not fear them. But all the congregation said to stone them with stones. Then the glory of the Lord appeared in the tent of the meeting to all the sons of Israel. So this is where God tells them how it's going to be. And the Lord said to Moses, How long will this people spurn me? How long will they not believe in me, despite all the signs which I have performed in their midst? I will smite them with pestilence and dispossess them. I will make you into a nation greater and mightier than they. But Moses said to the Lord, Then the Egyptians will hear of it, for by your strength you brought up this people from their midst. And they will tell it to the inhabitants of the land. They have heard that you, O Lord, are in the midst of this people, for you, O Lord, are seen eye to eye, while your cloud stands over them. And you go before them in a pillar of cloud by day, and in a pillar of fire by night. Now if you slay this people as one man, then the nations who have heard of your fame will say, Because the Lord could not bring this people into the land which he promised them by oath, therefore he slaughtered them in the wilderness. But now I pray, let the power of the Lord be great, just as you have declared. The Lord is slow to anger and abundant in loving kindness, forgiving iniquity and transgression, but he will by no means clear the guilty, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children to the third and fourth generation. Pardon, I pray, the iniquity of this people according to the greatness of your loving kindness, just as you also have forgiven this people from Egypt, even until now. So the Lord said, I have pardoned them according to your word, but indeed, as I live, all the earth will be filled with glory of the Lord. Surely all the men who have seen my glory and my signs, which I performed in Egypt and in the wilderness, have put me to the test these 10 times and not listened to my voice, shall by no means see the land which I swore to their fathers, nor shall any of those who spurn me see it. But my servant Caleb, because he has had a different spirit, has followed me fully, I will bring into the land which he entered, and his descendants shall take possession of it. Now the Amalekites and the Canaanites live in the valleys. Turn tomorrow and set out to the wilderness by way of the Red Sea. Then the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, How long shall I bear this evil congregation who are grumbling against me? I have heard the complaints of the sons of Israel, which they are making against me. Say to them, As I live, says the Lord, just as you have spoken in my hearing, so I will surely do to you. Your corpses will fall in this wilderness, even all your numbered men, according to your complete number from 20 years old and upward, who have grumbled against me. Surely you shall not come into the land which I swore to settle you, except Caleb the son of Jephunneh and Joshua the son of Nun. Your children, however, whom you said would become prey, I will bring them in, and they will know the land which you have rejected. But as for you, your corpses will fall in this wilderness. Your sons shall be shepherds for 40 years in the wilderness, and they will suffer for your unfaithfulness until your corpses lie in the wilderness. According to the number of days which you spied out the land, 40 days, for every day you shall bear your guilt a year, even 40 years, and you will know my opposition. I, the Lord, have spoken, surely. I, the Lord, have spoken. Surely this I will do to all this evil congregation who are gathered against me. In this wilderness they shall be destroyed, and they will die. That is about as far as I need to take that, except for, but Joshua the son of Nun and Caleb the son of Jephunneh remained alive out of those men who went to spy out the land. That is my thought about the Pareto Principle as it applies to many, many things in life that I've seen. And in a perfect world, this wouldn't be the case, but this is just kind of the case because of human nature. Humans are pack and herd animals. So if you look at, I guess that I should have one more note up there. It's kind of a cause and effect relationship. So you look at that story we just read, which is bringing us into Joshua. That's really the continuation of that story with, that gap of time in between. You had 12 men went to spy out the land, right? Only 2 of them came back with a good report. Those 2 had a giant effect on the rest of Israel's history, where we are today. Those 2 exemplified courage that God has charged his people to have. Those 2 men exemplified the same effect that we should have on other people. And so I look at this Pareto principle and I think, how does that apply in the congregation? And how does that apply in my speech when I talk to other people? The efficacy of my words, the effect of God's message to the rest of the people in the world. Is 80% of what I'm saying wasteful and not achieving anything? And if that's the case, should I change the way that I'm speaking? Should I not change the message that God gave, but maybe in positions where we push too hard on somebody, maybe it's because that pushing too hard is being wasteful. Maybe the position that we should take is, like, I think FDR had a quote, speak softly and carry a big stick. You should have a weight to your words. Like when Paul speaks, people listen. Paul rarely speaks because he is very thoughtful. You can attest to this. He is thoughtful. He listens, and he is thoughtful about his responses. Brother Paul. He listens, and he is thoughtful about his responses. And when people are that thoughtful, they bear a weight to their words. I also think of Brother Justin when I think of this principle. So if we want our message to be effective, have a large, great effect on the communities that we live in, whether it's our work, whether it's our group of friends, whether it's our people, we have to try to start thinking in terms of this Pareto principle, because it's not a rule, but it is observed in life. Like it's not even necessarily a hierarchy, but there's a lot of different situations in life where this is very obviously the case. Now, in the case of Caleb and Joshua, I'm no mathematician, that's for sure. But in Caleb's report to the congregation was positive. Joshua joined him in his campaign. 12 times 0.2, that would be 20%, right? Equals 2.4. So we don't even have that good of a sum. The mathematical sum here shows that 2 divided by 12 equals 16.666667. In other words, being a Christian means that a 83.33333%, 16.6667% ratio of success rate in Caleb and Jacob's situation. I call this the Judeo-Cristiano Pareto paradox. Sorry, this is a mouthful. So, in other words, in terms of the word and the Christian true belief that Caleb and Joshua exhibited, it is an even smaller margin of individuals willing and able to stand up and speak against the norm, to cut against the grain, and to swim upstream. Caleb and Joshua's belief in God's promise and courage was an example that is exonerated, I think that's the right word, and exemplified thousands of years later. It had a direct effect on the benefit to the nation of Israel. They did not have this effect and could not have had this effect by sitting down and quietly waiting for somebody else to stand up. It also made me think of the proverb. One of you guys might know the actual address of that proverb, but the one that says something to the lines of, when there are many words, sin aboundeth, right? I know Megumi's going to find that immediately. That's not it, but you're on the right path. That's not the one either. It's straight. It's almost. I'm almost quoting it word for word. When there are many words, sins abound. Meaning, you're going to make mostly mistakes when you talk. 20% of what you say is going to get through. I really get to see this principle applied when I'm trying to teach my son something, because sometimes I talk so much that he falls asleep while he's listening to the answer. And there's no, what's that? It's not the attention span. It's because I've trained him to tune me out. So I think that if we had more study and if we had more listening in our conversation with people, we would have a better message when trying to convey our message or God's message to the rest of the people. 20% of what we're saying is actually going to get through. You might be wasting your effort and wasting your time with the extra 80% of what you're saying. So like Paul does, speak softly and carry a big stick. The weight of his words are generally very effective at conveying his message. That doesn't mean don't speak. That doesn't mean don't take action because you're only going to be 20% effective. That's absolutely not what I'm trying to suggest. And in retrospect to the last message that I talked about, having courage, there was another, this one's in my phone. There was another message or another proverb that Sister Megumi, who I feel so blessed to have in our congregation, sent to the men's group text. And it was so cool, I snapshotted it and took a picture of it, because this is something that I've carried with me from my youth, like a young time. Before I ever knew anything about God, there was something that I respected so much that I learned in my Aikido class that one of my Aikido martial arts instructors taught me. And it was like a maxim that the whole gym, the whole dojo held. And it was, all they would say is fall down 7 times, stand up 8. And I was like, man, that's really cool. That must be like a really cool Japanese principle that they say in Japan, because I had a lot of respect for what they did over there. And when in fact, Megumi sent us Proverbs 24:16 that says, for the righteous falls 7 times and rises again, but the wicked stumble in times of calamity. Fall 7 times, rises again. That means you got up 8 times. I thought that was something outside of God that I had learned before that. And it kind of shaped my character from a young, impressionable age when I was 13, 14, growing up a little bit, at least, into a man. But in fact, it's a biblical principle. It's something that was said in God's word. What an awesome thing that is, at least for me, to come full circle and find out years later that the thing I've respected for so many years actually was a principle from God, written in his word. That's awesome. And that's about all I have for you guys today. Thanks for listening. Is there any questions? Pops. Prayer requests. That's a thing we can do.